very dangerous. Meanwhile, as we change gears and talk about our industry, some very liberal CNN personalities who used to be cooks have a peculiar habit of fantasizing about the president's violent deaths. First, you have Kathy Griffin. She posed with the president's severed head. It's hysterical, right? And now, in video obtained by TMZ, celebrity chef of parts unknown, Anthony Bourdain, very successful, I should add, says he'd like to poison the president.
If Trump and Kim Jong-un were going to have a bit of a summit to try and mend relations, and they wanted you to cater, what would you serve?
Hemlock.
I saw that.
Worked for Socrates. Joe Concha writes for the media outlet On the Hill. Joe, your reaction to the latest death threat to the president, or am I overstating it? Is this just a jovial reaction to TMZ?
People always say in these situations, lighten up, just a joke. And I get humor. I'm the kid who, as a teenager, snuck in to see Eddie Murphy Raw when he had the purple parachute pants on movie in front of a brick wall for 90 minutes. I totally get that. But let's play parallel universe for a moment. Let's say Brian Kilmeade a couple of years ago decided that he was going to make a joke about poisoning President Obama. How quickly do you think the petition would be out, in seconds or in minutes, for you to get fired? All right.
It would be 90 seconds.
Exactly. All right. Hypothetical aside, let's give a real life example. Hank Williams Jr. You remember him for decades. Monday Night Football. You're ready for some football. Works for ESPN. A couple of years ago, he compared
on Fox and Friends.
Oh, and on Fox and Friends. Okay.
He did this on Fox and Friends.
I did not realize that. I'll have to YouTube that when I go home.
So, yeah.
Anyway, he said, oh, so you know what I'm going to say then, that he compared President Obama to Hitler. And ESPN immediately fired him because, as we know at ESPN, if you compare a sitting president to any white supremacist or Nazi, you're going to get the hook, unless your name is Jamil Hill, of course. But
coming up next, some more on that in a second.
Right.
Yeah.
But all joking aside, what we're doing now, if week after week we're joking about assassinating a sitting president, it normalizes the conversation. You remember that Missouri state senator? She said on Twitter, I hope the president gets assassinated. We had Snoop Dogg do a mock shooting of a person that looked like President Trump in a video. We had Johnny Depp making jokes about assassinating a president. We had Shakespeare in the Park every day during the summer graphically stabbing a president. When you do it over and over again, it normalizes the narrative. In our situation, in our society, we should not be doing that.
I agree with you, but Joe, the other part of me is this. I think we've gone so crazy with fire, suspend, get rid of, reprimand, apologize. We spend the whole day wondering who's apologizing to who and who went wrong, to the point where when you and I are on unscripted situations like this one, we're not even ourselves anymore because we're concerned about how something might be misconstrued. Do you see how we could go too far?
Or
do you think this doesn't fit that category?
I think absolutely Anthony Bourdain should not be fired. He shouldn't be suspended. But can reasonable people agree that at least he should apologize, or CNN? Because here's the problem for CNN. They have an image problem right now. They are seen by Trump supporters as the opposition network more than any other media outlet. That's why they get the rally at the rallies. That's why the chant goes over and over again. And when you have your host holding up severed heads like Kathy Griffin did, even though she's entertainment,
and she did get fired.
And she did get fired. Reza Islan, he was a host on that show, Entertainment, called the president a POS on Twitter. He got fired. Bourdain says, you know what, I think I want to poison the president. Joking, fine, but now there's a pattern, and Trump supporters, they say, you know what, that makes our argument for us that CNN is working against us and not trying to report on what we're doing, even though we're not talking about journalists or reporters. Everybody gets lumped together, and it's unfair.
And if there's 5 big stories, and 4 are good for Trump and 1's bad, the one that's bad leads. And people say erroneously, well, that's fake news. No, we're not saying it didn't happen. We're saying it's disproportionate the way you're covering it. And this is an example of something, though. I think at the very least he could say, kidding, shouldn't have said it. Let's back up.
That's not allowed to ask for.
Because as he says, Anthony Bourdain, I didn't like Donald Trump when he was just a billionaire. He was not a fan of him.
Says he has utter and complete contempt for him, and he can say that all he wants. That's fine, but just apologize.
And Joe, good news for you. It's Friday night. Now you can go to the clubs. You still got plenty of time.
Clubbing, huh?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Wow. It's really
you're in Manhattan. Doesn't everyone club in Manhattan except for James?
Yeah, I'm going to go to Limelight now, I think.
Thank you very much. I don't even know what that is. I assume it's good.
It was in a church years ago. Eddie Murphy actually used to go there. Yeah.
So we started with Eddie Murphy, and that's how we end. All right, Joe. Thanks a lot. But we're not done with controversy in media. CNN is isn't the only cable channel where hosts are getting overtly political. Remember, we've been talking about this all week. ESPN's Jemele Hill. She remains at the network at this hour, despite a Twitter tirade in which she labeled President Trump and his supporters as white supremacists. And yet she was not even suspended. And in fact, this is what the ESPN said, tweeting this. ESPN is paying a really big price for its politics and bad programming. This is actually Donald Trump. People are dumping in record numbers, which is true, and they are firing people or laying them off because of that. Apologize for the untruth, he says. Now, Doug Adler is a former ESPN commentator. He is suing the network after they fired him for using a term called guerrilla, meaning guerrilla warfare, as not gorilla, meaning a gorilla animal in a zoo, to describe the aggressive way in which Venus Williams was winning her match at the Australian Open. Doug Adler, you've been down on the other side of this. Where's the tolerance?
Brian, I don't know, because, you know, with regards to my situation, it wasn't racially driven. It wasn't politically driven. It was just all about professional commentary, complimenting Venus Williams' style of play and her tactics, and about right and wrong. And obviously, ESPN acted wrongly and unfairly.
You're on ESPN3, and you're doing the Australian Open, and you talked about how aggressive Venus Williams was playing, and you said she's playing in a guerrilla fashion. The next day, you're shocked to find out that people took that wrong, as if there was a racial component to it. And next thing you know, you're gone. After how many years of the network?
Over 10 years. I've done the Australian Open and Wimbledon with ESPN over 10 years, and I also did the French Open with them as well.
This reminded me, and by the way, you do a great job, and you have nothing about this in your background, and everybody knows it, and people in the tennis community back you on that. And Venus Williams didn't say you should be fired at all. But I want to bring you back to, remember Alvin Garrett on Monday Night Football, and Howard Cosell was the color commentator? He was one of the smaller wide receivers, the Smurfs with the Redskins. And he jumped up and made an incredible catch. And Howard Cosell said, look at that little monkey, grab that ball. And he says, like I did with my grandchildren. Howard Cosell was never racist. One of his tightest friends and greatest confidants was Muhammad Ali. But yet he was dragged through the mud there, didn't lose his job. You did.
Well, you know, I know that that affected Cosell in a very negative way. And as with myself, you know, I had a heart attack following the firing. I had to go on Twitter and defend myself. And, Brian, what I never could quite understand, and I don't understand, is I had the relationship with ESPN. I had none of this in my background at all, furthest thing away from me. And ESPN bowed down to Twitter and social media who knew nothing about me. How could they do that? How could they not do their due diligence and stick up for me? If my name were John McEnroe or Martina Navratilova, this never would have happened.
But yet Mike Ditka did eventually lose his job. And yet Curt Schilling immediately lost his job. And sadly, do you think politics plays a role in that, even though this is slightly different?
You know, I'd hate to think that that's the case. I don't even want to make an assumption because, you know, a lot of people made assumptions about me, and they didn't know the first thing about me, so they were wrong. So I just don't get it. It doesn't make any sense, particularly when the people at ESPN and my colleagues said they knew exactly what I meant and what I was referring to as a compliment to Venus's style of play.
So do you think it's corporate America? Do you think it's sponsors putting pressure on corporations like Disney that own ESPN that say, make the change? I'm seeing the backlash on my products and advertisers. My bottom line's affected. I don't care about the future of one sportscaster who happens to be great at calling tennis and other sports.
That would be really sad if that be the case. I mean, it's certainly a culture that's being manifested over at ESPN. And for someone like myself, I mean, you wonder where the loyalty is. I'm a professional, and ESPN is listening to amateurs. It just doesn't make any sense. And that's why I'm in a lawsuit. Where else can I go to get my name back, to be cleared as a racist, and get my career back? I mean, this is the career I love. It's my passion. I was working in another job in my early 40s, and I gave that up. I was making a bunch of money to pursue my passion, and it worked out great. And look at where I am today.
Well, Doug, your fight is a fight for a lot of people, so people support you, and most of all, your family and friends know you. So don't let it get to You don't let it get to who you are, and keep fighting back and coming on shows like this.
Brian, a pleasure to meet you. I think you do a wonderful job, and thank you for the opportunity to present my side.
All right, Doug still fighting. Meanwhile, and by the way, we're all one mistake from being in the same spot. It feels like a century ago, but Sean Spicer has only been gone from the Trump White House for a couple of months. In fact, he was working after we thought he left. Coming up, Sean Spicer.